Good to have you still in the rig with us as we continue our trek down the road. This subject is quite passionate for a lot of people. It really is, because we raise cattle here. The beef industry is strong here. The heritage of ranching is incredibly strong in the Beck News area. Well, there's a lot of people who believe, in fact, the United States senators from South Dakota, Senator Rounds, Senator Thune, the United States senator that I know quite well, from Montana, Senator Tester, have all come out and signed on to legislation that basically says we're going to have country of origin labeling. We want to have that stamp on our beef. We want to have that tag when you go to the store that you know that beef was raised and processed here. Okay, that's been something that R-CALF has been fighting for a long, long time. They have. Obviously, a little bit closer. You've got advocates. You got allies. Bill Bullard is the CEO of R-CALF. We asked him to come on and spend some time with us. Bill, good to have you coming down the road with us.
Glad to be here. Thank you, Joel.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the support that you're getting from these United States senators and the cause itself, what you're trying to accomplish here.
Well, the senators that have signed on are those who are representing the interests of their constituents. And as you said, many are farmers and ranchers that raise cattle. Unfortunately, other senators choose to support the interests of the World Trade Organization and other corporate interests over that of the independent producer. And we've recognized for a long time that the marketplace is dysfunctional. It's because we don't have competition for beef in the grocery store. The meat packers can source generic beef from around the world and then pass it off to unsuspecting consumers as a product of the USA, because there is no differentiation at the grocery store level. Mandatory country of origin labeling is absolutely essential in order to ignite competition at the grocery store, so consumers can choose which country they want their beef produced, and they can choose which beef supply chain do they want to support. Do they want to support their rural communities, American cattle producers, or are they satisfied supporting producers down in Costa Rica, Nicaragua, or Mexico, or any one of the 20 different countries we import beef from?
So one of the groups that is against this, that doesn't want that label on that beef in the grocery store when I go pick it up, is the meat packers themselves. Describe to the public so that they understand the meat packing industry and how it works here in the United States of America.
Well, the meat packing industry is one of the most concentrated sectors in our American economy. We now have just 4 multinational packers that control 85% of the fed cattle market. So they're sourcing beef from the domestic market. They source live cattle from Canada and Mexico, and then they source beef products from around the world. And it's in their interests to maximize their profits. And they're doing a great job right now by sourcing cheaper, undifferentiated beef, bringing it into the US market, and essentially charging the same price as a domestic product would command. Now, we produce the best beef in the world under the best of conditions here in the United States. We have the most rigorous production and food safety standards. And these other countries aren't required to meet identical standards as the United States. And nevertheless, the meat packers can bring this meat in or bring in the live animal and slaughter it here and then sell the meat using the reputation and good names of the American cattle producer, the American rancher. And so they're benefiting greatly at the expense of consumers on one end of the supply chain and cattle producers on the other.
I want to talk about where I live, North Dakota, because I recently had Senator Kramer on my radio show, and I asked him whether or not he's going to do as Senator Thune and Senator Rounds did from his side of the aisle and support country of origin labeling when it came to beef. And obviously, for beef producers, what I hear overwhelmingly is that it's going to help. And so, you know, my point in asking that question is, if not, why? And he didn't give me an answer. He didn't, in fact, by not giving me an answer, he gave me an answer, which is no. You know, and Senator Hoeven, there's talk that Senator Hoeven might have committed to and support this legislation. You know, the WTO and how that works, that used as whether it's an excuse or part of the conversation. I don't think you can avoid it as part of the conversation. But for the listeners out there, who those two gentlemen I just talked about are their United States senators, if they throw back at that rancher and say, look, this is a WTO issue, which Senator Kramer did to me yesterday, what would be your answer to them? What would you want that rancher to tell them?
Well, we're a sovereign nation. We not only have the opportunity, we have the obligation to serve the United States citizens, and that includes our American cattle farmers and ranchers. So if we have senators who instead wish to support the interests of a political group at the World Trade Organization in Geneva, that's a problem. That means that they're not representing the interests of those in America who have a strong desire to strengthen our U.S. economy, to strengthen our domestic supply chains, to ensure that we have an abundant, affordable supply of beef that's produced right here in America. All of that is contradicted or opposed by the decisions made at the World Trade Organization, which is a global entity. So we need our senators to start looking at the people they represent and do what's right for America.
So what does the act do? What specifically does it do? What does it accomplish?
Well, what the act does is it restores beef among the various commodities that are required to be labeled as to their origin. For example, fresh fruits and vegetables, fish, lamb, chicken, goat meat, peanuts. There are many food commodities that are currently required to be labeled so consumers can exercise choice in the marketplace. Beef is an outlier. Beef simply is not required to be labeled, and therefore it is not being labeled in the domestic market. So the act restores beef so it would be subject to the same laws as currently applies to lamb and chicken and these other commodities. And then it recognizes that we do need to address the WTO concern, and it directs our U.S. Trade Ambassador and U.S. Secretary of Agriculture to spend 6 months to develop a means of complying with the WTO rules. Now, that's important because the United States has lost several cases before the World Trade Organization, but in many of those cases, we were able to go back and achieve a diplomatic solution to resolve the concerns that the opposing parties had brought to the World Trade Organization. That effort has never been undertaken for mandatory country of origin label. Congress simply folded at the initial ruling of the World Trade Organization. And so there are many opportunities to resolve this issue in a way that allows our U.S. consumers to have the information they need to make informed buying decisions, and the opportunities for our cattle producers to begin competing at the grocery store level. Because when a consumer chooses the USA beef product, a product that is born, raised, and harvested in the United States, each and every time they choose that product, we create demand for U.S. cattle that are born and raised in the United States of America, because the packers can't source beef from anywhere else in the world to satisfy that specific demand for beef that is born, raised, and slaughtered right here in the United States. And so the law, the act, is going to direct our U.S. Trade Representative and Secretary of Agriculture to engage in that process to figure out a means. But the act recognizes that this is vitally important to the interests of Americans. And as a result, if after 12 months, neither the Secretary of Agriculture or U.S. Trade Representative can resolve or can find the means, then the act will go into effect anyway. So it is guaranteed to go into effect within 1 year of its enactment in Congress. So we need to get it enacted. We need to begin the deliberations necessary to try to make this WTO compliant. But if we can't, we're a sovereign nation. This is important to consumers, important to our rural America, and it's going to go into effect. And then when that happens, well, then the World Trade Organization will do whatever it needs to do, and we will continue to defend our right to provide consumers with very important information on something that's essential to them, and that's the food that they nourish their bodies.
Last one, Bill. What about the cattlemen themselves? In my state, R-CALF supports this piece of legislation. The stockmen don't. The North Dakota Stockmen's Association does not. If I am a representative, if I am a senator from here, and I've got both groups arguing about whether this should pass or not, you know, that gives me an out. That gives me the ability to say, look, North Dakota Stockmen's Association didn't want me to vote for this. I mean, how do we get the ranchers to realize this is important and work together?
Well, unfortunately, there's politics involved in every issue. But in this one, not only with the exception of those who you mentioned, but the consumers in North Dakota and elsewhere want it. And so we are reaching out to consumers right now, asking for their help. We want the consumer to be able to choose beef produced in the United States of America or beef produced in Costa Rica, Nicaragua, Argentina, Brazil, Mexico, Canada, or wherever. We want them to have that choice. We want the opportunity to earn their favor in a competitive marketplace. And so I think as this bill begins to gains momentum, I think we're going to see more and more people reach out. And the organizational structures, the leadership that are tied closely to the meat packers are going to end up losing their constituencies, their members, because this is common sense. Why wouldn't you want your beef to be highlighted in your domestic market with a country of origin label on it?
Yeah. Bill, always good to talk to you. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out, and I guess it's all into calling your senators and congressmen is the way to go. So thank you. Thanks for coming on.
My pleasure. Thank you.